Welcome to Support Life, a program focusing on current social issues from a life-affirming perspective. I'm Gavin Walsh, and my guest is Rebekah Walsh, who is a youth minister on the Catholic Youth Mission Team in Melbourne. Welcome, Rebekah.
Hi, Gavin.
Now, we've had a really fantastic chat.
Yeah.
Okay, we've chatted about the great mystery of God and choices and all sorts of things. So tell me a little bit, you come from another state.
Yeah, I come from Wollongong in New South Wales.
Uh-huh.
So I was born originally in Sydney. My parents lived in Campbelltown.
Yes.
Grew up in Sydney. And then they moved down to Wollongong when I was about 3.
Okay.
So I've always lived in Wollongong, always grown up in Wollongong. It's my home.
All right.
Yeah.
So when you were 3, you moved to Wollongong, but there were brothers and sisters. So tell me about family.
Yeah, so I'm the eldest of 6 kids. So I have 5 younger brothers and sisters.
Uh-huh.
Family of 8.
Yes.
Yeah, it's awesome. Big
Awesome.
family. I love it. It's the
Fantastic.
best.
Okay, so how's the bathroom packed out of a morning?
Well, actually, I find that on Youth Mission Team it's a bit trickier. We only have 1 bathroom on team, whereas we had 3 bathrooms at home. So
hey.
it makes it easy.
It sure does.
Girls get downstairs and boys get upstairs.
Okay, so primary school, and you went to a co-ed school, so tell me about that.
Yeah, so I went to a Catholic school, primary school and secondary school, because my family's Catholic.
Yes.
And I've grown up Catholic.
Yes.
And yeah, so I grew up going to a normal Catholic primary school. I guess I found that, it was a really great start, and my parents, that's what they always wanted to put us through. So.
Okay, so this is where your foundations of faith were laid.
Yeah, well, I would definitely say that my foundations of faith were laid with my family. Like I said, pretty big, classically Catholic family, traditional Catholic family. It was an amazing childhood. I had the best childhood, and I think one of the greatest gifts my parents ever gave me was that they really formed each of myself and my brothers and sisters in our faith.
Yes.
From a very early age. I've always had faith and belief in God since before I can remember.
Okay, but of course, when we hit adolescence, sort of 12 years on, it's kind of taking ownership of it instead of just, this is mum and dad's religion, and yes, I've got these foundational planks of faith. You begin to make some choices, right?
Yeah, definitely. So obviously, growing up as a kid, your faith is your family's to start with, and you do as your parents say. But yeah, I guess as we were talking about before, I guess I started to make choices for my faith, and it started to really become my own around the age of about 12. I made my first choice for my faith over something quite small, actually. I was given the opportunity to go to a camp for Navy cadets, but it would mean that I would miss out on Mass on a particular Sunday. And part of my faith is that I'd want to put God and the practice of going to Mass before an opportunity or a promotion, so to speak.
Yes.
So that was probably the first decision where I actively said, look, if it's going to mean that I put this before Jesus, then I don't want to do that. And
That's a good choice. I'm going to intervene here with a little story. I was very loosely involved with the Passion of the Christ. Mel Gibson had sent his Australian manager to meet with me, and so we met in a Melbourne hotel and went up to the room, and around the wall were all of these still photos taken by a guy called Ken Duncan out Sydney way. I think it might have even been Wollongong, where he attends a church, and he took all of the still photos of the various stages of the making of the Passion of the Christ. And you have to imagine that every morning Mass was performed. You had Mel Gibson, and then you had the actor as Jesus each day with additional and varying degrees of whips and scars and marks. And he comes and hands you the Eucharist. Imagine that, dealing with it. Now, your parents taught you something really quite delightful. You had a little choice about how you take the bread. Tell me about that story.
Yeah, like that story that you were just talking about is quite moving, and I think for me, I see that especially because as part of really instilling us with a really deep faith, my family and my parents were really great in forming us in our faith, and one of the things that they really focused on was the importance and the holiness of the Eucharist. And so when I made my first Holy Communion, my dad took me aside and he's just like, look, you can do this either way you want, but your mum and I, we received the Eucharist on the tongue, which is, I guess, a more traditional practice in the church, and not, I guess, so widely taken nowadays. And I guess that's fine, like, each to their own, but for me, he explained it in this way that every speck and crumb of that piece of wafer is the full presence of Jesus Christ. And to avoid, I guess, having crumbs drop on the floor and being brushed off and trodden on, my parents always received the Eucharist on the tongue, and they asked me if I wanted to do the same, and I basically said, yeah, I don't want to brush Jesus off onto the floor.
Well, you know, Jesus says, do this in remembrance of me, and so we're handling him. Why would we want to bring offence in any way, whether it's in our thinking, moral behaviour, attitude, or the way that we handle this very moment of ingesting?
Yeah, and it's like he's given himself to us in the most amazing gift that could ever be given, like this full presence. And so I think, I don't know, the way I've always seen it is that deserves like the ultimate reverence and thanks.
So Rebekah, on that note, you're watching Support Life, and we'll be back after the break. Welcome back to Support Life. I'm Gavin Walsh, and my guest is Rebekah Walsh, who is a youth minister on the Catholic Youth Mission team in Melbourne. Well, Rebekah, we've kind of embraced how wonderful and important Jesus is to you. And now talk about this missions team, and you and Jesus are able to do what? So why did you get caught up in the missions team? What happened?
Well, so this year I've chosen to do a year on the youth mission team in Melbourne. I'm based in Melbourne. I guess that all started with, I guess, my first experience of the team. So I was at the very beginning of high school, probably about year 7 and 8. I still definitely had a very deep faith and deep personal faith, but as every student goes through during that stage of life, often there are things that we all want to do to conform and fit in. And I found that sometimes the practice of my faith was a bit embarrassing, or I found that I was really self-conscious about it in terms of I found that I was very different from a lot of my peers. And I guess some of the practices, like receiving the Eucharist on the tongue, or always going to Mass on a Sunday, which were very different from what a lot of my friends were doing, I was beginning to feel quite self-conscious about that. So I was around the age of 14 or 15, and one school holidays, I got a letter in the mail that had a flyer for a camp, and the camp was called I Stand, and it was an I Stand weekend run by the youth mission team in Wollongong. And I was like, well, I don't know what this is, I don't know who these people are, but I have absolutely nothing better to do in the holidays, so I decided to go along. And I did, and I went, and I absolutely loved it. And I was like, I don't even want to go back because I think what I found that I loved the most, what really drew me in the most, was that these young people were like me in faith and like-minded. And it was really great on that, on the Mass that they had on that Sunday. Nearly every single one of those youth ministers received the Eucharist on the tongue, which is something I'd really struggled with, because even though I believed and I really wanted to do that, it was difficult because I was the only one that was doing it, or so it seemed to me.
Yes.
And to see that there are so many other young people who are really practicing their faith, and in the same way that I was so uplifting and I think comforting to me, and really sort of began the foundation for a support in my faith by my peers.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so now you find a small community, like-minded, something stirring within your heart. So how many years did it take you to get to Melbourne from that moment?
Well, so like I said, I was about 14 or 15. I think I was in year 9, the first ice stand camp I went to. And I have been going to ice stand ever since. So I'm 18 now. This is my first year out of school.
Mm-hmm.
And I made a decision at the end of that first ice stand camp, that I wanted to do youth mission team one day. I was like, I want to be one of those people one day. But I guess to get there, obviously you have to finish school and you have to do everything else that you need to grow up. So I continued on with school and going to these ice stand camps and nights and receiving that support and that guidance in faith from my peers.
Yes.
And eventually it got to year 12 and I did my HSC last year in Wollongong, and I made the decision that the year after I finished school, I wanted to join youth mission team, because I wanted to be able to give to some other young person what had been given to me for all these couple of years.
All right. And part of that is this unpackaging of the love of God for a young person.
Absolutely. I think young people are so open to the faith, but the problem is that often they're not really told even the fact that there is a God that loves them. I think one of the really sad things that I heard quite recently was that it's estimated that after 13 years of Catholic schooling, majority of the young students who leave school are not practicing their faith. In fact, it's only 2% roughly of students that leave 13 years of Catholic schooling are still practicing their faith at the end.
Yes, and in the Protestant world, it's about 2 to 4%.
Yeah, it's
that are
very
not following
similar, I think.
their parents' belief and understanding.
And I think that's just because no one's ever really, like, we have RE classes definitely, but no one's ever really told them how much someone loves them and how much there is an amazing Saviour who just longs to receive them into his arms.
Absolutely. And of course, sometimes when you take youth missions to its logical conclusion, you, who go to the different schools now, you're the first living Jesus that they meet. Would you like to unpackage that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the many ways that we experience Jesus, and in fact one of the most powerful ways we experience Jesus, is through each other. And I think being able to provide that support for another young person in the same way it was provided for me is a real living witness to other young people that someone cares about them and that Jesus loves them, because you have that love from your fellow peers and from people who are like-minded in faith, and you can't foster a relationship with God if there's no one to show you the way. Like, you have to have that environment where it's okay to really develop that love for God and to really seek that. And I think all young people are really looking for something like that in their lives. The problem is often, all too often, they just don't have that kind of environment.
Yes.
or anyone to show them the way.
Well, thank you, Rebekah, for that lead-in, and we'll be back after the break. You're watching Support Life. Welcome back to Support Life. I'm Gavin Walsh and my guest is Rebekah Walsh, who is a youth minister on the Catholic Youth Mission Team in Melbourne. Well, Rebekah, we've got to the point where you and Jesus are on a mission, right? You're into schools. How do the schools receive you? What's happening here?
What I've found is that they're so open and welcoming. I find that of all the schools that we've been to, and being still the first half of the year, it's not as many as we will have by the end of the year. I found that so many of the teachers and the schools are so welcoming and happy to have us, because I think they really see the impact we make on the students. And it's not just the teachers, the students themselves are definitely welcoming the message that we're bringing, and I find that they really appreciate the day and the time that we spend.
Okay, now sometimes you can be thrown in at the deep end, and you told me a story about year 7s. What happened?
Recently we went to a school where we had 200 year 7s, and at first we were all like, wow, year 7s, they're rowdy to begin with, and 200 of them, that's massive. So I think we're all a little bit on edge, but what we realised as the day went on was that, yeah, they were rowdy, but they were so completely open to the message that we were bringing. And we don't usually work with year 7 students, we usually work from year 8 to 12. And we found that it was actually such a blessing to be working with these young kids, because they were so open and they were so happy to have us there, and they were so actively involved in the day, and it was just wonderful to see.
So you're trusted with a whole day?
Yeah, we run reflection days on usually from Wednesday to Friday.
Yes.
On any given day of that week, and those reflection days are structured into 3 different sessions, which are usually based around the school's timetable. So we have an opening session which kind of introduces the theme for the day, which could be something like self-image or individuality, like that sort of thing. So the first session kind of breaks that open to start with, and the second session really delves a bit deeper into it, and then the third session asks the students to make a response to God and His love. Okay,
so tell me about these year 7s and their response. What do you think was going on in their little minds and hearts?
I'm not sure exactly what was going on in their minds and hearts, but I'm sure it was something amazing.
Because you saw things happen. What happened?
Absolutely. At the very end of the day, that third session, when we had nearly the whole grade coming up to make a response, and the session was set up so that we had an icon of Jesus at the front of the stage, and then we had pieces of paper cut out so that students could come up and write a prayer to God, and it could be anything from, God, I really want to deepen my relationship with you, to, God, I'm not sure if you exist, but if you are there, show me. And we had kids lining up on either side of the room, just waiting to go and make their response to God. And at the end of the line that I was facilitating, there were 3 young year 7 boys who came up to me, and they were just like, Miss, do we have to go and write a prayer on the cards, or can we just go up there and pray? And I couldn't help it. I was so happy. I was like, yes, absolutely, you can go up there and pray. And one of the little boys said to me, he's like, oh, Miss, Jesus Christ is with me. And I was just absolutely astonished, because I'd never expected to see such openness from the heart of 3 young year 7 boys. It was just absolutely beautiful.
So that's a memory that's not just going to carry with you this year, but forever.
Yes, definitely. I think it really showed me the impact that we were making in just one day. I've seen the impact of the youth mission team on the hearts of so many young people over such a long period of time. I hadn't really taken into account that even just a single day of mission could change someone's perspective on their relationship with God.
Mm-hmm. Well, it changes because you and the Trinity are at work.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the most important thing in our mission, is that we really rely on God so much, and we rely on the Holy Spirit to really be with us during the day, because it's only through God that we can really do this work. It's for Him and it's through Him.
Okay, so in a sort of a summary, here you are, you've made a stand. And we're going to bring two little phrases here, I and stand. Why are they important?
I Stand is the name of our youth group that we run and the camps that we run during the school holidays. And it's so clever the way they've created the name for it, I Stand, which means I stand for Christ. And that's kind of, I guess, the motto, or a way of allowing young people to really make their choice for Christ, mm-hmm. and make little decisions in regards with their relationship with God. Yes. I Stand for me was such a place to foster growth and love and relationship with God. And that's what it is for all the young people who still come to our youth group camps and things. We run them on Friday night. So Friday night here at Benedict House, actually, we have like 30 or 40 young people in here having like the times of their lives. And as a young person myself who went through the same things that they were going through, I used to remember that I would wait for and long for Friday nights, because it was my opportunity to really find that support and that encouragement in faith. And I know that it's the same for so many of these young people who come.
Now, one of the mysteries of God at work in our lives is here we have the youth group called I Stand. And over time, you've discovered that it's not just a capital I, but it's a little I. There's less of you and more of Jesus. Tell me about that side of it.
Absolutely. I think any relationship with God requires us to be self-sacrificing and to really put God first in our lives. I've found that through giving up pieces of myself gradually, and sometimes on a difficult level, that I've been able to really grow in faith and love, not just of God, but of others. Mm-hmm. I've found that through gradually making more and more decisions in regards to, I guess, denying myself and choosing God, that gradually that love has really grown and really has been fostered. All
right. Well, Rebekah, thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you so much, Gavin.
You've been watching Support Life, and that's all for our program today. Join us again next week. Goodbye.